When a client comes to me asking, hey, can you automate this process? Can you set up these automations in my business? I don't always know the answer right away. And what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk you through the exact process that I follow, the series of questions that I ask myself and the way I research the problem to determine if it's possible. So you can see here, I've got my Miro board and I call it the How to Automate Anything framework. And it's pretty much a series of yes and no's because I'm trying to choose the best option first. And if that's not available, then I go further down and start moving towards least preferred options. And I'll say why those are less preferred options. So first things first, if someone says to me, hey, can you automate these two tools? The first question I'm asking myself is there a Zapier or Make connection? And the reason I focus on Zapier and Make is simply because I know them and they are two of the most popular and longest running no-code automation tools. So you're going to have good support. They have a lot of support in regards to apps as well. So the first question is always, is there a Zapier or Make automation? And all I do is I come and say, let's say I want to automate MailChimp, for example. I'll say Zapier, MailChimp. I'll just do that. And then I find the first option. Normally it's the first option, and that will give me an indication of all the things I can do, the triggers, the actions, etc. So the first question is, are these apps even supported? And you can see here, if I say yes, then I do exactly what I just did now. So let's say I know I want to be able to add a subscriber to an automation, or I want to be able to add a tag to a person. I'm going to check in that list of actions that just popped up. I'm going to say, can I add person to a list? Can I add a tag? All those type of things. Obviously, if let's say I'm trying to add them to an automation in MailChimp and I don't see that as a specific option, like add to automation, I'm going to be looking at stuff more like in MailChimp, can I put someone into an automation based on them having a tag? And then I'll see, okay, can I add a tag to a subscriber? Cool, I've got my solution. So it's a lot of that type of Sherlock Holmes-in of questions and saying, can I do this? No, if I can do that, cool, maybe I can piece this together. So let's say yes, it does offer the actions I need, then I'm going to use that, as I literally said. And I have to do that for both things. Then let's say it doesn't have a Zapier or Make connection. Now we're starting to get a little bit trickier because now this is when we need to start looking at APIs and things like webhooks. So do I need to start an automation? So does it need to be a trigger or an action that I'm trying to do with Zapier or Make here? So if I'm trying to start an automation, then the question becomes, okay, does the app offer webhooks? Because I need some way to now start an automation in Zapier. And if there's no trigger on Zapier's side, then that's what a webhook is for. Because I need to go then set up the webhooks in the app and then use the actual webhook trigger in Zapier. And that's how I can start my automations. So it does offer webhooks. And again, let's say I'm trying to work out if MailChimp has webhooks. I'll say MailChimp webhooks. Literally, I'm just Googling a lot of this stuff and you're researching, you're looking at the documents, you're going deeper and deeper. So then I'll find the webhook documentation. I'll have to go work out how to set those up. But essentially, if it offers webhooks that I can kickstart an automation for the thing I want, let's say I want to do something when there's a new subscriber, is there a new subscriber webhook? And then if yes, I'm going to use that. Let's say it doesn't offer webhooks. Now things get a little bit trickier because I'm trying to start an automation and there's no way for me directly to know in the app and notify another app, essentially. So now the question becomes, can I send the data to another app? For example, MailChimp wouldn't have something like this, but let's say I'm looking at QuickBooks or Xero and I want to kickstart some type of automation based on something happening in Xero. Then my question would be, okay, do those apps have their own integrations of some sort? For example, does Xero or QuickBooks have an integration with Google Sheets, for example? Can they sync with Google Sheets in some way that when a new transaction happens, it goes straight to a Google Sheet? Because I know that Google Sheets has an integration with Zapier. So that's one way I start to piece this together. The reason I don't love these things is because we have to add another middleman, essentially, another middle app. So it starts to increase the complexity, it introduces more moving parts. So I'm always trying to go from the simplest approach to the least simple approach. And in this case, let's say we didn't have the official integrations to Zapier, we don't have webhooks, then it's okay, can we send the information to a Google Sheet, and then I can trigger that in Zapier because that does have a Zapier connection. Or another alternative is email. Let's say we have an app that sends notifications to your email of new subscriber, new paying customer, new sign up, etc. This isn't ideal, but again, Gmail does have an integration, for example. So we could say have an automation start with Gmail, and then we'd have to go into the email parser, for example. Zapier has an email parser, or what ChatGPT is really good for these days is send in email content or unstructured data to it and saying, extract for me these various keys, extract name, product name, date, cost, or whatever. And then ChatGPT can give you that structured data back. So that's another option is, can we send it to Gmail because we receive notifications of some sort? But again, these are not always the preference because it can be more inconsistent and it's introducing more layers of complexity. So let's say it doesn't send data to any other places. Now we're starting to have to introduce people. Like as we get further down this list, we might decide this just isn't worth the effort really. You might realize that it's not saving you as much time as you thought it would, or the complexity overhead just isn't going to be worth it. So then the question is, I can't send it to another app. Is it viable for me to trigger the automation by a person? And in my case, a lot of the time I'll use forms. So let's say we have it's something to do with CRMs or the sales process, and we want something to happen after a sales call. Maybe there isn't a trigger for a deal that has moved into another stage or something like that, but we could have a sales rep fill out the form saying new sales call completed, or sales call completed form, or a new event type just happened. So we can have a person on the team filling out the form, which then would trigger the automation. So that could just be with a Google form, Typeform, whatever you want it to be, but we have some type of middle ground of a person triggering this automation now. And if we still don't want to have a person triggering the automation, that's when we get into a situation that this might not just be doable, it just might not be feasible. We might have to just keep throwing people at it, for example. Okay, so that's all that side of the branch. But let's say we are fetching data. So instead of triggering an automation, we need to pull information out of an app somewhere in the middle. Those are the actions in Zapier, for example. So let's say we don't have the official Zapier or Make connections, or we just don't have the actions we need, for example, and we are sending or fetching information. Then we are looking at APIs. We need to work directly with the API, because APIs are official ways of how we interact with apps. And that's what Zapier and Make are doing in the background. If I need to do an action and I don't have it in the official connection, I'm asking myself, does the API offer what I need? Does it have a get customer? Does it have a get transaction? Does it have a get account? Does it have a get report? Does it have find user? All those type of things. And if it does, awesome, I'm going to use that. Again, that is the easiest solution. Again, you would need to know how to work with APIs a little bit. You need to know a little bit of code, which is why I always say understand how APIs work, how to work with a little bit of code. If the API endpoint doesn't offer that, now we're getting into the not so fun parts of automation. And to be honest, I often stop at this point. I don't go down this branch if a client needs this type of thing, just because it introduces a lot of overhead. But let's say the API doesn't offer what we need. Then the question is, well, we could in theory still scrape the data. It's not always necessary within the terms of service for a lot of these apps, but we could set up a browser automation, which essentially emulates a person using the browser. So it could be like, we want to pull or customers or new transactions. You set up a browser automation, which is quite complex, that logs in as if it's a person using the browser, scans the list maybe once every hour, pulls all the new transactions, and then adds them to a Google Sheet, for example, or a database. So you essentially are creating your own database in this case. You're scraping all that information and putting it somewhere that you can work with it how you want. Then the question is, let's say we can't use browser automation. Again, we end back with people. The question is it viable to have a person manually enter it? And in some cases, it might be. For example, if you can find someone who's just got an hour or two a day on your team, or you hire someone online from a lower cost of living country, it could be viable just to have someone spend an hour or two to log in, add the new transactions if it's not like crazy volume, and then they enter it into a Google Sheet or a database. And like I said, you would have, so let's say it is viable to do that, then we're going to go that path. If it's not, again, we end at the well stage of, I mean, this just might be one of those things we can't really automate. To summarize, that is the thought process I follow with pretty much every automation project. Very fortunately, a lot of the time, a lot of my clients are working with the same tools over and over, things like ActiveCampaign, HubSpot, ClickFunnels, Go High Level. So I don't have to go very far down this chart, because the very first question of is there a Zapier or Make.com integration? The answer is often yes. And because they're doing a lot of the same things, I kind of just stop at that stage of, it also has the actions I need. I don't need to go any further into this crazy stuff of browser automation and scraping and all that type of thing. So that is me summarizing the process of, can I do this? Is there official integration? If not, can I look at the API or the webhooks? If not, is there some way for me to still automatically scrape the data using browser automation or from notifications? If not, can I get a person to help in this process? Yes, no, etc. And if you want help setting up these type of automations, or you have an automation project, then you can reach out to me. You can just go to the links in the description. I've got everything there. You can find a way to contact me, let me know about your project, and I can see if I can help you as a no-code automation expert.